Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to Social Media Made Simple. I'm Elisa, Product Marketing Manager at NapoleonCat here, and today I am ecstatic because we have been fans for such a long time. My guest today is Annie Hodge from Girl Power Marketing. Yay!
Woo!
Annie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be on here. Thank you so much.
Annie is the founder of Girl Power Marketing, and she's bringing social media news trends to her community and also to us because we have been following you for quite some time. You probably get that question asked a lot because you founded Girl Power Marketing in 2020, and we all know what happened then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious, how did you get to found your business, and how it came to life, and how was that experience for you?
So I launched Girl Power Marketing in 2020, but it wasn't a business then. It wasn't even, it didn't even enter my mind that it would be a business. I kind of wanted to prove to people that you could have a successful career in marketing specifically without a degree, because for those of you that don't know, I don't have a degree. I didn't finish college education. I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was in my late teens. I kind of rotted in bed for a couple of years, and I honestly thought that I wouldn't have a career or be successful. Probably the illness contributed to that, but I think in school it was definitely drilled into you that if you didn't go to university, you didn't have a degree or any form of higher education, that was kind of it for you. You wouldn't be able to do anything. And I always joke that I'm a bit of a nepotism baby, because my mum managed to get me my first job as an admin assistant in a digital marketing agency where she worked. And without her, I would not know where I would be today. And that was kind of my first foot in the door of digital marketing. And I thought I could do this. But a lot of the things that I was doing wasn't interesting me until I stumbled across social media. And I wish I had a really interesting story about how I stumbled across that being a job, but it just came to me, and I asked my employer at the time if I could do their socials, and I realized that I really loved it. But I wanted to take it a bit further because I kind of knew that there wasn't going to be an in-house role opening up for me. I'd been there quite a few years at that point, so you kind of get to know what's going to be on the cards or not. So I started Girl Power Marketing, and the whole initiative was just to prove to other people that they don't need a degree because they can watch me do it. And I was kind of like the social proof of where you can get to. And I think the Instagram account, which is where I first launched it, grew to 1,000 followers in a month. And if anyone wants to stalk, you can scroll all the way down my page and find the little post where I celebrated that. And that made me realize that there was actually kind of not a market, because I'm not trying to sell to anyone, but there was that space for that conversation, and people really kind of needed to hear that and resonated with that. And it wasn't until this year that I actually decided to launch Girl Power Marketing as a business, because I realized that I wanted to do more. So I didn't just want to post fun educational stuff and memes. I love a meme. I really wanted to get some more money into the business. Everyone loves a meme, and I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm great at them. Gotta be your own biggest fan. But I wanted to really have the time and dedication to focus on it. And I was in a really privileged position where I was, again, nepotism baby coming through. I was working for my brother, who also owns a digital marketing agency. And he kind of gave me that foot in the door of, you've got the safety net of the fact that we will be your client. Just go and do your own thing and fail at it. Go and try at least, because if you don't try, you won't ever grow it into the thing that you want it to become. And then that is when Girl Power Marketing for me became, I want to be that foot in the door for people. I want to be that privilege that other people have because they found my resource. They've had help through Girl Power Marketing, that they've actually been able to get a job. They've been able to move up the ladder in their career. So it's kind of more about now taking my privilege of where I've got and being able to spread that to everyone else, which is a very long-winded version of that story.
Yeah. But I love so many things about the story. First, I really appreciate you sharing and being open and transparent about your struggles with eating disorders, because I think so many people feel alone in
Mm,
that. And I think it's true for any type of struggle, really, when we live in this society where there's so much pressure to be perfect, and yet then there's someone who has the courage to say, I had my struggles, but still, um, I made it. um, and the degree thing, oh my gosh, I'm a psychologist by degree, and my
mm,
career was far away from being linear. My career is up and down. I've changed career paths 3 times. So
mm,
I think the more people see non-standard career ways, the more options they have for them.
mm,
And in the term, and I think also there's absolutely no shame in using the opportunities that you have. Like, if you can put your foot in the door somewhere, do it, and then try. I think that's
mm,
the biggest thing, because I know so many people who are perfectionists and they're never trying, and it's such a shame, because there's so much talent and potential. So amazing story, and thank you for sharing, because I'm really sure that some of our listeners will feel
mm.
inspired. Um, and now your community has over 100,000 members. So, what's the secret sauce to creating? And I think you really, the way I see it, you really have a community
Mm.
around you. I don't know if you share that feeling, but it's not just, this like, oh, community because we have
Mm.
followers, but it's really, they are active, they interact, and
And they help each other
it's
out,
become
which
a thing.
is amazing. Like sometimes I don't get to my comments as quickly as I'd like to because I just get distracted by other things and just normal life stuff. But when I go through the comments and if someone has a question, someone in the community asks answers straight away, and I don't have to be the person that's running it all. Like everyone else just is there in a safe space that's willing to help each other out or help each other understand something, or even just find that comradeship of we struggle with this is a really common thing, you're not alone.
Mm,
Like I often I make memes, and a common theme with one of my memes is social media is easy in like quotation marks, because it's something I've heard quite a lot. And you often get people kind of in disbelief, like, surely no one says that. But the amount of times you hear that, and especially if you're working on your own in house, like you're dealing with a lot of different opinions of what people think social media is and how you work. And it can feel really lonely and isolating. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the girl power marketing community is it's that relatability and that friendship that people can find in they're not alone, and other people struggle with the same things, and people get told the same things, and it's not just them, it's not a personal attack, it's this really unfortunate perception of our industry.
mm. So did you have a strategy beforehand for precisely that,
Mm.
or did it kind of come out as a byproduct of what you're posting?
I think in the first 2 years of girl power, so now I'm like my third year, um I don't think I really had that, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't know what I had in those first 2 years. I think I had a
Mm,
really good foundation. Um, but I know I wasn't putting my soul into it. I think I was kind of had the fear of people finding out that I didn't have a degree, which is silly because I was talking about it, but it was kind of that they're going to realize I'm an imposter. Like, what do I have to give? And then at the start of this year, I posted on my personal LinkedIn that I'm tired of saying no to things through the fear of messing up or, my anxiety getting in the way, and that I would owe it to myself to say yes more. And I genuinely didn't think I'd stick to it. I thought, it's a LinkedIn post, I put it out there, but I don't know if I'll actually stick to it. And you know what? I have. And one of those things was I knew I needed to humanize girl power marketing more. A lot of people had no idea who was behind it. They had no idea what made me different to everyone else. They wouldn't be able to point me out if my picture was somewhere or like even my name. So I started doing the things I was uncomfortable with, like making videos and going on Instagram Live, sharing my story more and opening up a bit more, and just really kind of humanizing the girl power marketing like brand and community. And I would say that has been my secret sauce because I've seen the most growth I've ever seen in the entire 3 years this year. And the community has just been getting stronger and stronger. And I think that is because, the authenticity of the fact that, I don't lie about not lie, but there's no smoke and mirrors about where I've come from. I'm very, who I
Yeah.
am via girl power marketing is who you would meet in real life. I would tell you exactly the same things. I'm very honest about my struggles and the fact, my social media timeline isn't perfect. My journey isn't perfect and it never will be. And I think that's kind of really what set me apart to other people was just the fact that people can relate to me and they don't just see it as, I don't know, me, trying to become an influencer or me trying to build the biggest brand possible. It's just me being me in public and, really sharing my mission with people, which I think a lot of people kind of relate with, especially if you are someone, that's not had that kind of traditional timeline into like in your career. I think you have that natural instinct to want to share that with other people and help other people do the same thing. And I think that's kind of really what set me apart.
Yeah, I love this so much. You're already my second guest here on the podcast who says exactly the same, that being authentic is the only way to go. Especially, I think now we see so much similar content out there. So to really stand out, you cannot try to be someone else. Being authentic is the way to go. And my question to you would be, what would you say to someone who's struggling right now? How do you find the courage to stay true to yourself and find that own voice? Because like we see over and over, it works. People are drawn to people that where you can see, yes, this is the person. It's not like some artificial persona, but I can see very easy how this can be triggering major anxiety and be very difficult. So what would be your advice to people?
I would say only open up the parts that you're comfortable with. You see authenticity thrown about all the time. And I've been throwing it about, but that doesn't mean you have to open up yourself like entirely. There's so much that I don't share with the world because you choose what you want to share. And I think something that really helped me was I had my first kind of what I would call successful round of therapy in 2021. And it kind of changed my life. And I never thought I would say that, but yeah, it changed my life. And it was all because my therapist told me about core values, which is kind of something you believe in that is of central importance to you so that you can make decisions easier. You can feel more aligned with what you do. And for example, one of my core values is contribution. And prior to therapy, I didn't realize why I felt so anxious about things or why I didn't feel like I was successful or why I just wasn't getting where I needed to be. And it's because I kind of realized that I wasn't contributing in the ways that was meaningful to me. And once I understood that, it kind of gave me the confidence to put myself out there more. And Another thing that really helps me, which I am, you know, I don't know, it sounds really bleak and I'm going to sound so depressing saying this, and it's something that is the way I have to think about things in order to get me to do things, because otherwise I genuinely think that I would still be rotting in bed now, um, is that, life is the longest thing we do, but also the shortest thing that we do. And would I be happy with what I have achieved or what I have done based on, my core values, because that's different for everyone, if I were to die tomorrow, which I know is so bleak. But it's what motivates me to stick to my core values, to really get myself out there, because the last thing I want to do, in all honesty, is go on podcasts, which sounds so awful because in my head, I know that it's the best thing to do, right? I love talking to people, but I would often let the fear of that get in the way. Yeah. And which I know, I'm so sorry for saying that on a podcast. But I don't want to go to live events. I don't want to do these things. In me, I would much rather stay at home and be behind the scenes. But equally, that's really bad for me based on my core values and what actually matters to me. And I think if you can just, do one little thing every week that pushes yourself into being more authentically you and showing up as authentically you, you will then naturally just start to become more and more confident in yourself, which is the only thing you need to be, the only thing you need really. And another thing with that is to not compare your journey to other people. So some people might look at me and not look at the entire journey and think, oh, well, she's got all of these followers. She gets brand deals, she gets this and that. And like, I've only just started and I'm not seeing the same thing, or I'm 3 years in and I'm not seeing quite the same effect. But, a lot of the beginning of my journey was down to luck and privilege. And a lot of people don't start off with that. There's people like Matt Navarra, who I absolutely love, who didn't start his social media career until he was in his 30s, I believe. And if I've got that wrong, I do apologize. But I know it was late in his life and he has changed careers so often and didn't really figure out kind of what he wanted to do until much later on in life. Like, you don't need to have it figured out now. And it's really hard when you're online to not compare yourself. But the easiest thing that I do to stop that is if I see something and I'm like, why am I not like that person? I just come off the app and I don't allow myself to go back on it for a while. And I go and do something else because it's really easy to get trapped in that way of thinking. But ultimately, you've kind of got to do those little things, and they don't need to be anything grand. Post on LinkedIn once a month. If you want to build on your personal brand or you want to just show up a bit more, just do it once a month. Look up some prompts online. They don't have to be the most amazing, groundbreaking things. It's just all about building your confidence in showing up as you and getting that kind of gratification and social proof of it's not that scary and people aren't going to judge me for doing this. And even if they do, oh well, we all judge people sometimes and it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean anything. I think as humans, we're naturally curious and we're naturally judgmental. So I think if we realize what we do, it's less scary thinking about other people doing the same thing. So yeah, that would be my best advice for showing up and getting yourself out there.
Beautiful values and kind of the non-negotiables, and I think the secret is we think so much about what other people think about us, and most of the people are busy thinking about themselves and what other people think about them. No one is actually thinking as much about us as we think about ourselves. So
no one cares more about you than you.
Exactly. So the secret sauce is building up your confidence, and that is a very easy answer, but at the same time the most difficult task. But really appreciating sharing those insights. It's also for personal development. I think that's an absolute gem. And now I want to shift the conversation a little to your little, the area of expertise. 2024 the trends have been there for quite a while, but for
Mm-hmm.
anyone late to the party, what are your predictions
Woo!
for the digital marketing for this year? Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say that I have seen a lot of people suggest that influencer marketing is dead. Like flat out, I have seen it so much in the last month or so that it
Mm,
will be fully dead, which I think is kind of hyperbole. I don't think that I really, really don't believe that that will happen. But I do think we will see a shift in influencer marketing in the sense that more brands will be leaning more towards industry experts or people with authority rather than the main focus being on a follow account. And I worked with SEMrush earlier this year on 2024 trends, earlier last year, which was a huge pinch me moment. And I suggested that authenticity will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest trends next year. But I think when people hear authenticity, they think that, it's just being yourself, and which, that is a part of it. But I mean authenticity in the sense that
yeah.
you are the expert in what you do. There's no smoke and mirrors, that's where de-influencing kind of comes in. And de-influencing was meant to be kind of a trend in 2023, but I don't think we saw as much of that as people thought. And I think, well, I'm hoping that in 2024 we will start to see that. And that's where kind of like the honesty and transparency kind of comes into things. And authenticity is being just more intentional with kind of the content that you put out, and if it aligns with your personal values or your brand values. People don't want to see perfect content anymore. There are some instances where they do, but I think overall people want to see the true side, the relatable side of things, which is kind of why I think people like Alex Earl have blown up, because fundamentally she's the least relatable person ever. She comes from an incredibly wealthy family, and on paper,
Yeah.
most people could not relate to her. But she has somehow created that connection with the audience by showing the smoke and mirrors that other influencers might not, her struggles with acne, her outfit mishaps. I think she wore a tracksuit to a game last year, and it was a really cute video that she done. And then the next day she showed the actual reality of it. And I think her entire butt was covered in sweat. And we've all had silly outfit mishaps, but you don't often see those kind of perfect influencers show that side. And that's kind of what people are looking for. So I definitely think that influencer marketing will be bigger than ever, but we will just see a shift in the type of influencing that we are going to receive. And I think the other thing that we're going to see a shift in is short form content kind of being chucked out the window, because TikTok Creator
Mm-hmm.
Fund has changed, and it is now basically you have to create videos a minute long and more to be able to have a chance of being monetized and get part of those funds. And they're really pushing video content that's longer than a minute. And I see why, because as I said, authenticity is huge, and it's so hard to be authentic in 10 seconds or 30 seconds or however long.
Yeah.
People want to see more of a story. They want to be able to connect with the people that they're watching, which is a really kind of ironic shift, because I think longer form content had its moment a few years ago, and it's coming back, and it's kind of reminds you that trends come and go. Same with like fashion, we're seeing, a huge rise constantly in Y2K and 90s fashion. And it's one of those things that even though we talk about trends every year, I think fundamentally that's all they are. They're just trends. And I think, I don't know if I've seen many people say this, but I think there shouldn't be such a strong focus on trends. We see the reports every year, we talk about them every
Yeah.
year, but has one trend specifically benefited masses and masses of people? Probably not. No, I'd love to see some data on that. And I think it can really put a pressure on people, and especially people in marketing, um, to really stick to those trends, that they just blindly listen to other people saying, without really thinking about, does that trend align with the brand? Is there any longevity to it? How much is it going to cost? Do we have the resources for it? You know, we saw the rise of unhinged content, you know, and that's great for brands like Duolingo. I mean, I don't personally love the content, even
Yeah.
as a Gen Z myself. I think some of the jokes are a bit, you know, there's children on this app and it's not that funny. But I don't know if that's just me getting older and a bit more boring in my age. But you know, that meant that we saw a rise of really like small, you know, average B2B brands, you know, like accountancy firms trying to achieve the same thing with unhinged content, and it just doesn't work. It ends up making your brand or your business kind of look, you know, if you want to present yourself as an authority, you probably don't want to be posting unhinged content 24/7, you know. If you're an accountancy firm and you're posting about your mascot doing some unhinged things, what does that say about the service you're providing? And I think that's kind
Yeah.
of, I think that's a not a huge problem, but it's definitely a problem that I've been noticing since working in social media, is that people try and stick to trends without actually thinking of how it impacts them and how they come across and what they want to achieve in marketing. And that, if for me, if I could have any
Yeah.
trend,
What really works.
yeah, if I could have anything happen over the next couple of years, it would be more people using trends lightheartedly. You know, we always um, you know, say that people shouldn't jump on TikTok trends, which is, you know, I kind of agree with. It's not always relevant, but why should we be encouraging people to constantly hop on new trends every year? I think there's a difference between hopping on a trend and
Yeah.
being aware of it, but sometimes you don't know how to use it, and if you don't know, don't do it. There is no pressure, and I think there can be a huge pressure to do that. Um, so yeah, sorry for that little rant about social media trends. It's just something that I haven't actually said to
No,
anyone
no,
else
and
before.
um, I actually agree that I think taking anything without real consideration, just because something has worked for another brand, doesn't mean it will work for you. It's the same with platforms. Um, and just being more deliberate. For me personally, what I want as my personal goal for 2024 is to be more deliberate in which projects I engage and which
Mm,
will gain more traction, instead of just thinking, oh, let's do this, let's do that, which is tempting and fun and you want to be creative. I really want to see, is that, I know it sounds bad, but is that worth my energy, and will it
yeah.
bring something meaningful further down the road? Um, when you were talking about influencers, I cannot ask what are your thoughts on the AI created influencer. I've seen people raging
Mm,
all over the internet, like, oh my gosh, she's fully like artificial. That just shows that all of influencers are crap. And
yeah, as
so
I spoke about this maybe like a month ago, because I saw a popular kind of social strategist suggest that we will see a rise in robotic influencer content. And while I don't 100% disagree, because I think, you know, it's interesting to see something that we don't always see, and initially it gets lots of traction naturally because it's, you know, not our norm. I just don't think that's true. I think we need that human to human connection more than ever, you know, with coronavirus, with more people working from home, with the rise of artificial intelligence, you know, I think that's going to lead to AI fatigue and people not necessarily trusting what they're reading or what they're seeing. We need that human connection. And the example I can think of off the top of my head is Pinky Doll, that woman who does that, goes on live and she's like, yes, yes, yes. And she's very robotic. And she popped off for I don't know, maybe a week or two. And then when I went and checked, because I was going to write an article about it, I thought I'll have a little look at her TikTok, see how she's performing. Her actual content doesn't perform that well. She doesn't have an engaged community. She's kind of stagnant in her growth. She also does a lot of paid ads that aren't disclosed, which, other people might not notice, but as a marketer, I unfortunately notice when you see Fashion Nova tagged in everything, and then
Yeah.
there's a link in the bio, but there's no ad. It's kind of like, that's a bit sus. But those videos don't perform well. It's kind of, people have seen it. There's nothing new. They can't resonate with it. They might be able to resonate with some of her fashion videos. They might be interested in that. But, with more people being interested in caring about things like sustainability, and then you're promoting a fast fashion brand like Fashion Nova, you're creating even more of a disconnect. Even if
Yeah.
that's not important to you as a creator, you are just creating even more of a disconnect between you and an audience. And there's nothing that, people can connect to. You can't relate to being a robot. I mean, maybe you can in work, but in the way that she does it, you can't. And I just think that if anything, robotic content and AI content, especially when it comes to influencers, just prove how much kind of, not that we need influencers, but we need those people that are real, that we can connect to and relate to and know that we're not alone. Because even though we can't relate to a lot of influencers that are getting, like six figures for a brand deal, when they're talking about things like grief or mental health or things that are really personal to them, that a lot of other people are going through, it really creates that, it really not even creates it, eradicates that sense of loneliness. It makes you feel less weird for struggling with something. It opens up conversations that you might not be able to open up to with your friends or family. And for me, I think that is what makes human influencers stand out, and why the influencer industry just won't be dead. It will just change. And I don't think, mark my words, but I don't think we have anything to worry about with, AI influencers.
Yeah. Um, it almost sounds to me like we don't need influencers. We need inspirational leaders. more,
Yeah.
more. I guess just
Yeah.
people who can, by their story, motivate and lead other people to maybe get out of whatever box they are currently into.
Mm.
And speaking about being human, social media can be very exhausting. You talk a lot about that. Like your community is also about that sense of like, man, it's sometimes so hard. So how do you take care of your own well-being and stay sane in this madness?
I think, something I definitely struggle with. I don't think it's kind of like a final destination. It's definitely a journey. One week you'll have it figured out and you do the most for yourself and you feel sane. And then the next week, everything goes absolutely tits up. Because, life gets in the way, unexpected things happen, and you don't always deal with things in a linear way. But I think what I've been doing for myself is, and this has only been the last couple of months, to be honest, that I've really had to check myself,
Mm.
is making time once a week for a hobby. Because it's very easy to finish work and then sit on your phone while you're watching TV and
Yeah.
have two screens in front of you, and then there's that disconnect. I try and put my phone down to read more, even if that's just half an hour or an hour. Like, I will set whatever's reasonable for that day. So I try not to be too strict with myself. I think as humans, especially as we get older, we have that childlike ability to, when you tell yourself or someone tells you you need to be doing this for X amount of time per day, you're like, no, I don't want to do that, because it's not on your terms. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit your everyday, and you go back into that childlike state of, no, I don't want to do that now that you've suggested that. Um, so yeah, I try not to be too strict with myself. It's a lot of self-reflection, I think, and it's really hard to do, and it doesn't look the same every day. I just kind of, anything outside of social media is a win for me, whether that's going for a walk or reading or doing some arts and crafts, be it doing something new, just doing anything, or even, intentionally watching a film and not having your phone as a distraction and putting it in another room so you don't pick it up
Yeah.
every 10 minutes to check something. I would also suggest, like, if you can, not having emails on your phone, like work emails, setting a time limit on social media for after work, unfollowing anyone that doesn't bring you joy or content that just, makes you feel bad. Even though you might be interested, you're kind of like hate consuming, it's not good. Even if you think it doesn't impact you, it does. And just being more mindful about the time you spend on social media. I had a thought recently that was kind of like, on my personal Instagram, it's weird how many people watch your story but won't interact with you. They're lurkers. They don't interact with your content. They don't message you. And it really weirded me out when I realized that. Like, I think I only have something like 800 followers on Instagram on my personal, which I've had since I was far too young to have it. And it really made me realize that we have lost that sense of social media being social. So when I'm using it personally, I try and use it intentionally for being social. And as soon as I find myself just scrolling for the sake of scrolling or comparison or whatever it may be, I just chuck my phone. I chuck my phone, and I try and go and do something else, because the less social I am on things, the more disconnected I become. And I think, this is going to go in a really deep tangent, but I think growing up with social media really impacted my ability to speak to people. And it's not something I noticed until this year. I am so used to talking to people behind a screen since the age of like 13. I'm 26 now. And I've been so much more comfortable messaging people rather than talking to people or picking up the phone. That it really stunted that kind of personal development of being able to talk to people. And being able to talk to people, I think, is a huge skill. And since I've started using social media a bit more intentionally for the sake of being social, liking my friends' posts and actually responding to their stories and trying to actually have a conversation with people, it has helped me in my physical life as well, and being able to talk to people and it not being a scary thing, which kind of sounds pathetic, but I think anyone who has grown up in a similar way will, maybe resonate with the fact that you feel that disconnect and it kind of leaks into your personal life.
Yeah, and I hate talking on the phone. I just hate it. Like,
I hate it.
Can I text you? And even recently, because like I'm an elderly millennial myself, and I saw a reel on Instagram that millennials message each other, "Can I call you?" before, and we were laughing so hard with my best friend because essentially that's what you do. And I'm like, "Is this a good time to call? Because I'm really tired and I want to type." But there's very selected few people that I like to talk with over the phone. Thank you for sharing, because as you were talking, I realized that personally for myself, I've been away to Canada for 1.5 years, and I've seen so many people I know just like watching my stories, but no one actually reached out, and I was feeling super lonely. And I think what you said about like being social and social media as opposed to just creeping up on people, because like it's very easy to feel the connection, like, oh, I see this person, I know what she's doing. I see that like she's traveling, so she's well, but that person may not be well at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah, people go out, be social and social again, or go offline and just take a break.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of every episode, we do this. We have our cats per some questions that we ask everyone. So, what's your social media platform and why?
Oh, so I think Work-wise, it has to be LinkedIn. Um, I really love it
Mm-hmm.
on there. I think that was the first platform where I kind of felt like I could talk to people like me and really just be myself, and not have to hide kind of like who I am, where I came from. And it's kind of where I really found my feet. Um, but personally, I loved Twitter. I used to love it a lot, but this year it's, with everything that's happened with Elon Musk,
Well,
it's a really hateful platform. Like I use my social
yeah.
account 99% of the time, and I'll often, go on my personal just to have a little look. And the For You feed is horrible. Like I didn't see the difference because I was on my social account more. So all of the content was kind of marketing related because that's what I was interacting with. But because I
Yeah.
don't use my personal that much and I'm more of a lurker on there, it's actually disgusting the kind of content that can come up on your feed.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely had porn show up on my For You. And like
Wow.
I right? And I genuinely was like, I think people, it sounds so bad because, but this is how people judge, I'm not perfect, but like, I'd see people say how horrible their For You page is, and I'd be like, but mine is all marketing related. Like, what are you guys seeing? And then when I saw my personal For You page, because I hadn't been on there, I was honestly, I don't go on it anymore because it just absolutely it just disgusted me. I just couldn't believe what was on there. So right now, I would say Instagram's my favorite, for personal use.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be really scared of posting, but now I've kind of told myself to not be scared, just post what I want because it's about being social. You don't need to create perfect content. And I think working in marketing, you can kind of have that, it can kind of leak into your personal socials as well of, oh, I need to create the most aesthetic content to post, but like people from high school don't care. They're just nosy. They want to see what
Yeah.
you're up to. So you may as well post stuff that like
Well,
brings you joy.
let, let's just start with the fundamental question: what personal content?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
my personal account has been lying, just like dying there
yeah.
because that's the last thing I want to do is post
Yeah.
anything.
Honestly, yeah. Once I've finished work, I'm like, I do
um,
not want to.
yeah. Is there anything you're watching, reading, or listening that you are now absolutely in love with and would like to recommend to our listeners?
So I recently read Yellowface, and that is an incredible book that I read in 2 days. I think it has some really interesting commentary as well on cancel culture and social media. I don't want to say any more because I don't want to
Mhm.
spoil the book for anyone that's potentially reading it or it's on their to read list. Um, but that got me back into reading, and kind of got my attention span back a little bit. Um, and I just thought it had
Yay.
some really, yay, it had some really interesting commentary. And I really liked the way it was written. It was an uncomfortable read as well, but it had a really important point, and I hope there is a second book because kind of ends it ends very unsatisfyingly. And then I've also been reading Talking to
Ooh, yes.
Strangers. Yeah, spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
um, I've also been reading Talking to Strangers, which I'm going to admit something really embarrassing. I didn't read what it was about, and I thought it was about just tips on how to talk to strangers. Um, and then when
Okay.
I read the opening, I was like, no, I mean, it's along the same lines, but it's not, this is how you make small talk. But it's about kind of like why we struggle to communicate efficiently with people and how that can have really drastic and negative impacts, in the world. And it covers things about like why we're more likely to believe someone is telling the truth rather than being deceived. And I'm only a quarter of the way through the book, but it's so interesting. It talks a lot about things that have happened in history and current events, and it kind of not changed my world so far, but it's made me more mindful in the ways that I interact with people, even on a small scale, not like a life-changing global scale. So yeah, they're the two things that I've been reading that I genuinely recommend to absolutely everyone.
And the most important question of all times: cats or dogs?
Dogs, 100%. I have a 13-year-old Labrador who is blind. He's got dementia and he's going deaf. And I've had him since I was 13, so he is my little bestie. We grew up together. And yeah, there's dogs through and through. I do love cats. I love all animals, but I'd choose a dog always.
Oh, yeah, I had a doggy who had doggy dementia too.
It's so sad, isn't it? Yeah. But he's the best. He's living his best life. He's a really, really happy boy considering, he is blind, almost going deaf, and doesn't know where he is. But he is living his best life. So it wouldn't surprise me if he lived another 5 years.
Well, all the longest and happiest life years to your boy. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and being authentic as well throughout this conversation. For our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Check out our other episodes, subscribe, and look out for more. And until then, have a terrific time. Bye.